and the difficult things must be done, and they must be done, and it's done, and we just, it's now finished.
Because the thing is, if you do not do something with the cats, that is an endangered species.
Yes.
If those birds are gone,
They need gone forever.
you got to say.
Yes, I love cats, but I agree that they were a problem for the endangered species.
But also, we are not talking about a normal cat.
And yes,
We are talking about cats that like have become wild animals. They've gone back to what they were.
yes.
Because you know cats have got that independent spirit, unlike dogs.
Well, even if they're domestic, they're independent.
Yes.
Except when you do your work.
So those cats had to evolve to survive.
Yes.
But now that they've evolved, you now are saying, hey, wait a minute.
They become pure.
But also, you're putting a cat is spends the whole night, there's never been in captivity. You're gonna get into a boat, there's never been in a boat, then you're gonna castrate it. And then do what with it after that?
Then the city says that doesn't get taken after a month, and then they euthanize the cat in any case.
And it's not like you're going to adopt. As
People-
much as you love cats, you'll never adopt a feral cat.
Because you can't actually, because if they're feral cats at the university, and they get trapped, they get neutered, they go back there,
So that's different.
because we have to keep the rat population down. So I don't, I'm a member of cat care, I donate money to cat care, but I don't foster cats at all.
No, no, I love your approach from yesterday. I love kids, but I'm done with it. It's a continuation of yesterday's conversation.
Because one of my neighbors is actually works in education cats. His cat has now moved into my house. What I'm actually now not having, because he just wheezes everywhere. I have to clean my house, wash the curtains, wash everything. So I feed him, but he has, like, got a kennel, a dark kennel with a clean blanket, and he can sleep there under the shelf, right? But he can't come to my house. But the thing is, so those cats are fed, they are neutered,
And that's 16
and then they put back to go, so they don't multiply.
to live.
But they are, yeah, but they wait for the food there at the university. They have people to feed them every day.
And then like, are they helping with the red
So
thing?
they keep helping the rats. That's right. Well, apparently, even in Russia, they hire cats. The cats live in the museums. Take the manuscripts.
We switch
So the guy that we had contracted, he has
to live in studio.
worked with UN and whatever. He did the Bed Island because they had also the same
After that,
Yes, but it's a human's fault. If you move, take your cat with you.
Do you see it now?
at around 16.
And you see it
I
now?
would have found all those bad people who live there.
Do you see it now? But what helped me the most was the fact that like SPCA was first approached. So guys, how do we navigate this? And they were like,
We switch
the minute it hit the news, they were like, no, it is inhuman. But you're not coming with a solution.
There was, yes, that is wrong. We must come with a solution. You see, and now it's all about the children in the families, that the people whose child it is, they don't want to make a sacrifice. I said to my cousin the other day, I said, now, I am going very grey, and I like to dye my hair blonde because I'm going grey. I said, that's what I would do. I said, now, do you not wish me, because I take, instead of going to the hairdresser, because I must support you and your child, what are you doing? I asked her. I asked her, what is she going to do? She must meet me halfway and say, what is she going to do? I can support it up to this point, and then she must come with something else. But she doesn't live a normal life, and I must not live a normal life.
I wanted to add on what you said. The problem with people is and this is where like, I've got a problem with our families where you get penalized for having boundaries, you get penalized for for making a success of your life.
But you make, but they wanted to make choices all the time.
Yeah.
Choices.
Hence I'm saying like you get penalized for making the choices. So like okay, at this age my kids must go, and then I wanna do this, I wanna do this, I wanna travel. But now you get nothing but no, but you're selfish. That money of traveling, the child is hungry. But this is your plan, and you have worked towards it. But now you must be either guilt-tripped or penalized.
I used to be guilt-tripped before, but I tell you, I'm not guilt-tripped anymore because I refuse to be guilt-tripped because because life is it's always about choices. And then somebody can't afford the child they've got says, oh, I really feel moody again. I
I'm paying 55,000 bucks a year. A year. So which means my daughter.
1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2. Say a sentence for you. Welcome and thank you for joining us.
That is what we tell our children. I told my son, there's no failure. There's no scandal. There's nothing. It's the books. They can do this, whatever, and using all these friends. No. But so it's a constant thing. Choice. It's like you got to, But also, you made that hard choice, for example, to say like I only want to. It's a choice that you had to make. At the time when I only had one pants and two skirts, and those cheap blouses. So now, because you have to pay off the house. But that's my point. That people forget that for you to be where you are, for example, for you to be a professor, you had to burn the candles on both ends. You had to be a parent, you had to study, If I think back to those days, like working more than a 60-hour week, because when you clock off at work, because you have a short nap and you must work into the night, and the rejections. This article was rejected by so many journals. And then the last journal, they said to us, they can't get a reviewer for it. They only got one review in. And they went to 11 academics in the country to review it. And then finally it was reviewed. And then there were so many revisions, rewrite. I thought I'm not giving up. But no one is there when that happened. But then when you are now, I get it. But at some point, finish, everybody wants to piss off. That's what I mean. But life is difficult. And you come here. Life is not difficult. People make it difficult. If people.
This is my song. This is my song.
Where the live music scene is today wouldn't be quite where it is at the moment if it hadn't been for the support and initiatives of something like Constance.
What's important about this program is that it speaks to what music can do for educational purposes. It speaks to what music does for entertainment purposes. It speaks to what music does for individual well-being.
So other countries, there are foundations that really help musicians to create and not worry. So to get something like this is very important so that people can take the music to the people.
The Norwegian funding is coming to an end, and that has been a fantastic relationship.
The last 10 years we have provided about 55 million rands to support the concert South Africa. We felt that has been a very good investment in terms of culture, in terms of output, and in terms of engagement with the youth.
It helps the nation understand itself, it helps us feel better about who we are, and it helps us become more of who we are, instead of living in small, frightened cages.
The music industry is something else, and it's always going to be a little bit weird and rotten.
It can be really tricky when you're making music, like for the artistry of music, but at the same time you have bills to pay.
You were my friend and you called me love. Because the piece itself is designed to put us in competition, shrink the soul of the song, not care for the vessel. The vessel is always under threat.
As a living, very tough. You have to be strong. It really can't be okay if you're not using your gift. I believe a gift unused becomes a curse. You want to allow your creativity to just go big.
Whatever you write or you perform, it must have a meaning in life, you know? Because music is not just cerebral. Music is deeper than that. It's what you are.
It's a healer. And we need to nurture it because it's vital that we create spaces for music to be able to blossom and heal.
We as musicians have a very important role to fill in society. We're like healers of some sort. We're therapists.
We need to sell the truth about the importance of something like this and get support for it.
I believe that if concerts were to disappear, there is nothing in the wind that would replace it.
If we get to a place where we don't have that, I'm a little bit scared.
The project got the name Concert South Africa, as my organization is Concerts Norway. So it was the idea from the Rikskonsertene was the biggest promoter of live music in Norway, funded totally by the Ministry of Culture. Culture, especially music, was considered as a very important contribution to build countries and make good connections between people.
With the monies channeled through Concerts Norway, Concerts SA started through the Samra Foundation, where I was working at the time. And the acknowledgement really was that where people really make most of their income. It's not on rights, royalties, or recordings. It's in live music.
We sort of started off by doing a bit of mapping out what the actual live music scene looks like.
We really didn't know what we were doing because there wasn't a template at the time. So we wrote up this thing.
And from that we built on how it works, which is really to build circuits and have consistent performance opportunities for artists.
And then, okay, you can write it up, but it only works when you run a pilot.
I remember one day in 2013 when Naila, who is part of Concerts SA, arrived. It was one of those miserable afternoons. She'd come bringing good news that we were going to be part of this pilot project where people will be able to go to Nicky's and there will be a band every weekend.
We then ran a battle of the bands, won by a not that well-known band at the time called BCUC. Last year I went to Womex in Spain. That same band won the Womex Award and is one of the biggest South African exports in festivals across Europe and now touring in the US. It talks to the trajectory from one of the first projects we've done to shape Concerts SA and where the band BCUC now is. Of course, we can't take credit for what they've become. But what this project has done is played maybe a catalytic part in some artists' careers.
4,000 rounds of bullets waiting to break black bodies again.
Msaki, you bumped into this project, was it 2016?
At the Soweto Theatre.
Contradictions fill the skies, but to pity they vow. Big belly politicians mutter about how you'll be remembered.
That was the first time we connected because that was a Concerts SA funded concert, but then I applied for the Mobility Fund and that changed my life.
See the ribbon around your heart.
I was still based in the Eastern Cape, and now I can connect with an independent artist in another region with who's been growing their audience, and we can share resources to make this show happen. And with the support of the Mobility Fund, it was just like 80% of the logistics are now taken care of. We can really think about being artists.
I'm going to bless you with a song that my dear mother wrote. My mother is the one who taught me how to sing.
One of our biggest activities is the Music Mobility Fund. We pull out a call for applications. Musicians apply to do a tour.
I tried the first time, I didn't get it because my budget was way high.
You give someone 15 to 20,000 rand. That doesn't cover the amount for a tour, but it covers for a couple of venues.
I tried again, Concert SA, Mobility Fund.
Then you give another band or artist 25,000 rand and they tour within the SADC region. That's not enough, but if they're going there already, it becomes a subsidy and it becomes a catalyst.
You know what? When I looked at what they gave me, it was, of course, not the amount I asked for, but my God, just that seed. I got moving and I got a lot done. It's the way that it's titled as well, mobility. It kind of gives you that grease for your wheels. It kind of like joined hands with me to live my purpose. And that's big, that's beyond money.
You know this Concerts SA project and what it was supposed to do.
Yeah.
You know its foundations.
Yeah.
As someone who sat as a custodian of governance.
So we were talking a lot about how to support venue technicians. And then we spread the conversation to how we could think about how South Africa connects to the region. Because again, because of our history, we were taught we were so special that we didn't have to connect to our region at all. We could just do things by ourselves. But that's not the African way.
Sing along, we're taking you back where it all started.
Musicians apply to do a tour. It's sort of twofold. We have a national tour, which allows musicians to travel within South Africa.
I guess it's just us exploring the town, coming to see different places, meeting different artists, getting exposed to the scene, the side.
People, man.
And then we have a regional tour which allows musicians to travel within the SADC region. So what that does is really gives the musicians the power to organize their own tour. It's been one of our most successful things that we've done, in that musicians get exposed. We've had musicians come back to us and say how much value that's added to themselves professionally, in terms of running the admin side of their careers and not just the artistic side.
Yeah, my grandmother was the first Shebeen queen here, but we just Godipola. But there's a Shebeen here. Yeah? There's a Shebeen there.
Just thinking of the diversity of the kind of artists that we supported. People like Busi Maslasela. There's the icons that are quite established. But over the years, Concerts SA has supported a whole range of artists across many genres, like Zoe Modega. Zoe won a SAMRO Overseas Scholarship, started performing on the Concerts SA gigs, and now she performs in major stages all over. Puoane, who's grown as a composer and arranger, performing a lot of their own works, and we sometimes bump into them when we assist in tours either to Europe, to the Netherlands, or to India. And then there were the singer-songwriter types like Laurie Levine that performed in many spaces.
Dreaming about the things that we could be.
I get the report and it says she did 12 gigs, and I'm like, there's a problem with this report. You can't do 12 gigs with 30K. I'm like, because we used to always have to investigate the report to see, are these people telling the truth? She was telling the truth. She's like, pack your guitar into your bag and go. And that was heartwarming to see how many artists used that subsidy and did much more gigs than we asked them to do. People like Gloria Bosman, who wasn't only an artist that we supported, She served on the advisory panel for Concerts SA. So there's the established artist, and then this emerging, bubbling talent over the last 10 years. And then there were the outliers, people that think outside of the box. These are the people I think that's going to take our music forward, and they're taking others forward with them.
We, as Josie Unsigned, were conceptualized with the hopes of trying to bridge the gap between independent music, live music artists, and opportunities. And we happened to decide to go on this journey at the same time that Concerts SA and the SAMRO program were coming into light themselves.
Christine was always like on the ground production support, full of energy, part of that Josie Unsigned team that made it. You know, I didn't know venues here. You know, I got my first gig at the African Freedom Station.
In a society such as ours, where what is deemed glamorous is often stuff that is not very wholesome, but it's plentiful, it's everywhere, and it's almost like there's a flood of things that have no depth, but have a lot of pull. The most important thing is finding people who want to support art.
I'd been hearing about Msaki, and everybody was saying, here's this incredible songwriter, you must meet her.
And then Lindy connected me to Nell, actually, you know, and I'm like, are you seriously trying to introduce me to Nell Muyanga? I'm busy, like, reading something he's written and I'm watching his revolting music on YouTube. I see him as this multiplicit being who understands that an idea can fit anywhere and kind of shape-shifts into these different spheres. I think you're also a hacker of your creativity. You know how to make anything work anywhere. And that's kind of given me permission to explore that in myself.
Spend my time loving you, if that's what you want me to do. You just have to say
Our mandate is to get people to unlearn the idea that, you know, let's just listen to what mainstream media tells us, but trying to encourage them to go out there and listen. Like, listen to this. Yes, it sounds like nothing you've heard on radio, but just listen.
I could spend my time loving you. That's what
You get those people that understand that they're part of a growing and vulnerable part of the industry, and they were holding space for us as we were becoming.
We'd rather use Concerts SA support to unearth new talent and new audiences.
I think the popular term would be role models, and the Malcolm Gladwell term would be outliers. And I think that they're outliers in many ways. They've not only used their music to generate income for themselves, but they've expanded the art form.
Any restaurant, for it to survive, that still has got to ring.
The consistency that you need is regular performance in regular spaces. In order to do that, you need regular spaces to regularly program music. So for us, the Venues and Promoter Support Fund, that was actually the key.
In some ways, venues are more important than artists. Some of them might shoot me for saying that, but the artist's got to perform somewhere. These little institutions called venues are run by passionate people.
What it's like to run a live music venue in South Africa. You better love it.
You can't pay someone to get up so early in the morning, make sure the beer's stocked and the food is ready, and
You better not be doing it for the money.
the cooks are there and the shrinkage is managed, and let alone the band coming in and the technical and all of that happening.
You better be doing it because you believe that music is one of the things worth fighting for.
So for a venue owner to survive in a country like ours is really hard.
On the days where you can't get out of bed, but you need someone to get you out of bed, that's why you do it.
So what we did with the venues program was to subsidize the artist fees so that they can regularly perform the music.
So the artists can start making a little more towards what we feel they're worth.
And these venue owners start to talk to each other because they see themselves as part of a Concerts SA fold, and started sharing acts with each other. You start to develop a self-regulatory ecosystem. I think that's the kind of world we want to live in. When it comes to venues, you had the formal spaces where they are ticketed, and then you had the informal spaces, sometimes where the magic also happens.
What they were proposing to us was to basically have the Tutu Museum to become a venue for live music concerts.
For us, that's really cool, because you're sustaining the music in spaces that are already subsidized.
It was a first for us, but also it was not only for us, but it was also a first for some of us in the museum field.
There's some museums that approached Concerts SA specifically because we saw what Concerts SA was doing with the Tutu Museum, and it just made sense that we should be replicating what they were doing.
There isn't a lack of spaces for the performance of live music, but there's a lack of activation of those spaces.
We wanted to be a bit more diversified in terms of what these public institutions are meant to be to the public.
That was one of the doubts that we had. Can a museum suddenly become a place where you have jazz music and all these other activities? But for some reason, interest grew, and now, since for 8 years we've been going with this program.
You sometimes bring the schools from the local area into the museum.
Promoters put on certain events for us as well, and they primarily work with the school circuit, taking live music performances to schools.
We coordinate those shows, we figure out which band, which school, which day, speak to principals.
We call it our little joy drug. You know, when you're having a bad day, a school gig is something you want to see.
Our school is in the deep rural areas where some of the parents are not working, families where there are lots of problems. Sometimes you find the child is not focusing, he's thinking about what is happening at home. When they are here dancing and singing, they just become stress-free. They forget about everything that is happening at home. I think that's a big benefit for them.
In a country like ours, those kids, if we didn't take concerts to the schools, they wouldn't experience live music. They wouldn't have a discussion about indigenous African music instruments and tradition.
They learned about names of the instruments, like today, some of them, they didn't know which that instrument the lady was carrying.
It teaches them to preserve our African instruments and music.
It's always worth it, hey, especially the kids' reactions, and you can throw any genre at them.
And then often the band would invite one of the kids to come jam with them. And then they see one of their own doing music with known artists, and you know that you've touched them. So yeah, you do like igniting little flames in kids.
To give concerts for children in schools was a very important thing for the ministry, I think, because that is the future. The children are the future.
Sadly, during COVID, we had to cancel those. It took away our joy drug. I'm not sure if we'll be able to do it again, as we're still on the hunt for Red October, looking for donors and funders and all of that.
I just want to acknowledge that this concert is supported by Concerts SA. So thank you so much to the Digital Mobility Fund. I did get mobility funding. I got digital mobility funding in the thick of COVID, where we were hungry, guys. Yeah.
We started this project by doing research. The first piece of research was called Songlines.
That venues survey was because the very generous support that was coming from Norway wanted to have some idea of the kinds of places in which they would be able to support music.
The next piece of research I kind of felt was even more significant. It was called It Starts With a Heartbeat.
And Heartbeat was focused much more on the various ways in which live music support could happen.
How do you activate local government to play a role in working with live music? In March, April of 2020, the world shut down. We had to figure out, okay, if there's no live music, do we give the money back to the Norwegians? And we said, okay, we'll come up with digital mobility. And they asked us, so what does that mean?
They were able to get back to the drawing board and work things out in a way that somewhere, somehow, the musicians are still benefiting and we're still motivated to be able to do the work we do.
Concerts SA did 2 surveys, one of which is currently available in a hard copy form, the other of which stayed online, which looked at how far digital platforming provided an adequate substitute for live performance.
Our digital futures research, we always made sure that it was like a toolkit.
The way research like this gets disseminated is very often there will be a large, serious report. There will be what Concerts SA calls a people's version, nicely illustrated.
They can take out the chapter referring to what happens if you're a studio. What happens if you're a policymaker? What happens if you're an artist and you're streaming? What are the rights involved? That's the research aspect. So that's cool. The shit gets used.
And then there will be some kind of launch or panel activity around it, which can be taken around the country.
Over the years, the workshops and the skills development, sometimes we used to do it for venue owners. Sometimes we used to do it for promoters. Sometimes we used to do it for artists themselves. And it was about honing their skills.
It's really practical, necessary information for musicians and other practitioners to jack themselves up, knowing your rights as a musician. So the compliance element, and we did that with a partnership with Sabro and the Arts and Culture Trust.
That's because they make a lot of money while they are on tour.
During COVID, there was a shift.
What's your system of getting your stuff out there? I have no system.
When we saw the weakness of the Digital Mobility Fund applications and the lack of understanding as to how do I put stuff online, we used the Digital Futures research to be able to develop grant-making and sponsorship workshops and to help people do their applications on a practical level.
This is a really nice list, I think, that starts to give ideas to creators about outside of my performing, what else am I doing? So now you kind of start to find other things that you're able to offer as a creator.
So in the last 4 years, the workshops have largely been around getting artists, venue owners and promoters to enhance their business skills.
Every story has its beginning. I think mine began here.
Prior to COVID, we'd already supported over 9,000 artists in all the provinces and in the 11 SADC countries. COVID, the world shut down, and then we went digital.
Maybe these hips wouldn't be swaying and wouldn't be dangling, and maybe not so feminine that you being around.
We did the research in July 2020 called Digital Futures, and one of the recommendations was develop a digital mobility fund.
So forgive me if I'm pressing, making this confession. I was down with a concussion. I woke up more alive.
We'll give you 30K, and we don't care how big the audience is, because during COVID, there was all these weird rules. When they applied, they'd have to say, oh, is it a 2, 3, 4 camera shoot?
When I needed you.
Beyond that, when they applied, they basically have a business plan for the gig. So some of them that didn't even get funding used that as applications elsewhere or started running projects.
Finally learned to pick myself up again.
So it became informal skills development. A lot of wonderful recordings were done. A lot of terrible ones were done. There were those that used the opportunity to partner with a film crew and leverage about 300,000 rand from our 30,000. There were those like Brad from the Braceland that used the 30K to get Nakani over and build a festival around him. So the work got more of a life. and the artists generated more income. And in that way, many little projects became catalytic.
Our best concert SA gig was the launch. It was documented, and obviously if you have something recorded professionally, you can always repurpose the material for ongoing shows.
Support brown bread till we fall down dead. Cause even die bald heads het 'n full crown dreads. Yes!
Amy Brown nicotine, dat is slim genoeg. So much as nicotine.
Dit is slim genoeg.
And in the last 4 years, we're now 23,000. But primarily South African focused. Thanks to COVID, we had to stop the cross-border tours. We had to stop the international exchange. Where we would love to see the mobility fund going is across our borders once again. Sometimes when we talk about mobility, like the mobility fund, we talk about the country and the provinces. But you know, sometimes it's a road that links spaces together. Route 62. Jannie van Donner is on Route 62, based in Montague.
Culturally, there's very little going on out here. There's certainly no money for any kind of event. There's very little that comes through government. A lot of unemployment here. It's a struggle.
When we were building not only the schools program, but looking at developing touring routes, Route 62 was important. And Jannie was one of those people that regularly performs in those little dorpies, in those towns, and kind of keeps the music alive in those little spaces.
I started an 8-piece brass band the year before COVID, and I live out here in the sticks. 2 months later, it was lockdown, everything ground to a halt. Then Concert SA gave us an opportunity to put the band back together. Had a fantastic concert at Daisy Jones that we filmed, which has provided opportunity for the band to get out there. I also have an 18-piece jazz band that Concert SA helped me to bring out here. I don't think a big band has ever played in Montague. We also brought the Delta Suitstemmer from Stellenbosch, doing the old Cape songs. We did a weekend here with them, and Zolani Youth Choir, which is from the township outside Ashton. A brilliant youth choir. Suitstemmer do Afrikaans songs, and Zolani Youth Choir do Xhosa gospel songs. I'm getting a lump in my throat. It was so beautiful. We brought them together. They taught each other songs, and we did a fantastic concert in the museum in Montague. We brought various other artists in Montague. Derry Gripper came and played. Tribal Echo. That stuff would certainly not have happened if it wasn't for Concert SA. So in my experience, that funding provides an enormous platform for our musicians. It's so important. It makes all the difference.
Tell me what kind of help you guys get from government.
Are your questions included in the interview, or shall I repeat them? So, yeah, we get a lot of help from the government, a lot of fuck all.
I don't think the South African government at the moment is aware of the importance of the arts and how it can actually add to the economy and to the social fabric of society.
As usual, the arts and the music and that kind of thing is the last thing on it's the last one on the list, really.
You have the phenomenon of projects that are funded by European cultural agencies on the assumption that the responsibility for the financing of those projects will be magically transferred to the South African state.
Government probably consider supporting the arts as irrelevant.
I worked in Europe. For 20 years, I've been getting support from another country, and every time I try to bring our friends here, it's always a problem.
And the problem isn't fundamentally one of money. There's actually tons of money. It's a question really of how that money is really strategically invested in a way that enables organizations to actually build for the long term.
It's time to basically let Concert SA evolve on its own without the funding.
This was donor money, a small amount of money, the aim to be catalytic, to activate artists, venues, alternative spaces, with the hope that the state would learn from the model we put together.
One of the areas where Concert SA has lobbied very hard, although I'm not sure quite how many policymakers were listening, came out of the Heartbeats report, conceptualizing a nighttime economy.
Many Chinese cities have introduced policies to drive consumer spending during evening hours. This is known as nighttime economy.
Very few local authorities in this country have conceptualized the notion of a nighttime economy. Whereas if you look at Northern Europe, for example, they have people who are actually in charge of the nighttime economy of a city.
The Mayor of London has just come out with a draft strategy for the nighttime economy.
It's a source of joy, enjoyment, helps people to think about their identities, say, as a citizen of Johannesburg. It has all those positive implications.
In a country like ours, many of us know what music meant during the time of struggle, knew how it brought us together, knew what these songs did for us. Our state has not seen fit to use music, art, and culture as a way of activating our youth. A better life doesn't mean more money or a better house. It means how you engage with the world. And I think culture, art, music helps you do that.
I hope that there will be funding from the South African ministry's side. They should have been coming more stronger on board as a partner, not only Norway standing alone, and when the Norwegian money stops, nothing happens.
We need to consolidate our efforts to lobby the policymakers to take this model and make it work, like they did in Norway.
Music is worth spending money on, also to build a nation and to build bridges between people. And I think that's a very important political task in South Africa.
Unlike many arts organizations, SAMRO has been good to this project. Not only over the last decade, the Southern African Music Rights Organization has saw fit to give us administrative funding.
I always remain hopeful that eventually we should be able to find other partners that will be able to plug in the gap that has been left by the Norwegian government.
With that stability, we now need to leverage the project funding. We often speak about the venues, the workshops, the promoters, the mobility fund, but lobbying and advocacy is Concert SA as a model. That model needs to be taken up by cities, by provinces, and by the country, and maybe even other countries to foster live music.
Dreams, that's all there is.
Josie Unsigned were my bridge to moving to Joburg and finding an audience and making it possible to think about what my life as an independent artist trying to gather my audience and find my people would look like.
Loved you so far that your dreams were mine.
Right up until me being able to do my first tour with a full band, which was going to be impossible to afford, that was something that I was able to go and do because of the Mobility Fund again. And we had a joint show where I got to meet Morena Leraba. And I know he's also been a beneficiary of similar programs. So I can see what it's meant in this weird, long, difficult, independent artist journey, where that kind of support is the difference between you saying yes to a very unhelpful contract because you feel alone and you feel like that could be more support, or you figure out how to create your own path with this kind of help.
Pray away the pain of not being in alignment with our dreams. That your life.
Through a project like Concert SA, we were able to encourage people to think about, if you're touring, think about how you formulate a circuit. Immediately that asks you to collaborate with other like minds. It's not just about your venue being successful, but it's about how other venues can build a circuit, they can build a festival scene, because then the investment is not just a solitary venue or particular artist, but it's about how the ecosystem of artistry can really flourish. And I was very proud of that. I'm still very proud of what was able to happen through this fund and through this outlook.
I wish there was more opportunity for culture here. I've had a lot of experience in my life of spending time with poor people who had opportunities to learn music that took them out of their situation. For instance, George Werner's Little Giants is a great example of that. That organization has provided opportunity for youngsters to learn instruments, and some of them have gone on have gone on to be music lecturers at universities overseas, and people who otherwise might not have had any opportunity to get out of this poverty.
We have to keep on. Just keep going. Positive vibes will flow. One love.
Discussion on research on women in live music. For those that you arrived early at the venue, we hope you enjoyed the documentary. For those that you were online, we hope that you enjoyed the documentary. For the others that are here, as you walk through and you sign in there with Lee, at the back of the venue, there's an exhibition on women in live music. There's a whole range of important women whose shoulders we stand on. Gwen may say a few words about how that exhibition came about and the lady that put that exhibition together. But before you do something, sometimes they say you must thank the people that made it possible. So the entities that made it possible is Concerts SA, Concerts South Africa, the South African Cultural Observatory, and next to me I have the CEO of the South African Cultural Observatory, Unathi Luchaba. Hello. And then the Southern African Music Rights Organization. And the CEO of the Southern African Music Rights Organization is another lady, Annabelle Lebete. And then the Festival Enterprise Catalyst. And it's another lady, the CEO of the National Arts Festival, Monica Newton. And then there's the team at the Young Blood Gallery. And Natasha is around somewhere, and Ina, it couldn't make it. But as you can hear, another lady, there's a lot of women in the sector who's doing interesting stuff. So with me on the couch, we have Tutu Puoane, who will be performing later. Welcome, Tutu.
Thank you.
Fantastic.
Thanks for inviting me. Thank you.
Fantastic tour around the country.
Yeah.
I can't wait for your performance a little bit later. Cool. The first time I saw her perform was in 2003.
Wow.
Okay, so, and then I'm very old. Yes, sis. Okay, fine. And then next to me, I also have Professor Alethea de Villiers with an S. One of the most important things happening later this year is that the South African Cultural Observatory will be hosting a conference. And Unathi, maybe you want to talk to us about your event later on in the year.
Thanks, Andre. Good afternoon, everyone.
Hey.
We can do better, I'm sure. Has it been a long week? Hello, everyone, and thank you for gracing us with your presence. We are honored that you took time off on your Friday afternoon to join us on this beautiful conversation we're about to have here on women in live music. My name is Unathi Luchaba, as Andre has introduced me, and I'm the executive director of the South African Cultural Observatory, which is a research organization that's hosted at the Nelson Mandela University. And it is fully funded and supported by our government, the National Department of Sport, Arts and Culture. And our mandate is to map and understand and value each and everything that's happening in the creative industries in South Africa, on how it contributes to a country's growth and development through GDP, through employment and trade. So we do all these nice, exciting things in numbers and economics with the help of the sector, with the help of the researchers, the entertainers, the creatives, the artists. So that's what we do at the Nelson Mandela University, at SACO rather. And we've got partners, you would see on the brochure, hopefully they're here, Rhodes University and the University of KwaZulu-Natal. But to touch on what Andre has asked me to do, which is to speak about the conference that we are hosting at the end of the year. So we'll be back in Cape Town in November 4 and 5 at the DHL, is it the DHL Stadium?
Yeah.
Or the Cape Town City Stadium. We'll be hosting our 2-day conference, a SACO International Conference, with the theme looking at the creative economy futures. We know that this sector went through a pandemic of its own before the actual COVID-19 pandemic in 2019. In fact, I think the sector has been in a perpetual state of a pandemic. It's sad, really. And then the COVID came. And this was one of the hardest hit sectors in South African economy. This is a sector that thrives on proximity. Tutu, you would know this because you're a live performer. So everything came to a standstill in 2019 when we went on a hard lockdown. It meant we couldn't attend festivals, we couldn't consume the creative economy products, goods and services like we normally do because we all had to be at home. So we had a conference post that looked at the creative economy reset. Where we were discussing how then do we, as a sector, recover and reset what has happened and just come back from where we were. So now this year's conference is looking at the future. So we've had a reset. Now we're looking at the patterns, the trends, and the policies for the future. And we're looking at how then do we unlock this growth potential that has been identified that exists within the sector. So the conversation that will be taking place here in Cape Town will be centered around that. So please do register for that, even if you're not submitting an abstract as a presenter or as a researcher, but come, I think it'll add so much value. I think there's a lot to be gained by attending that sector. And we're also going to be having masterclasses in that same week before the actual conference, but all of those announcements will be made via our social media platforms and on our website. So please do follow us on our social media just to keep up to date with the developments. But this was, in short, to say thank you and welcome once more. I saw when I walked in, one of the people I used to admire growing up, I used to watch Good is Nice. Yes!
It was very nice.
I used to watch Good. In fact, I think it was a week or two ago when I came across, how people post things on social media from way back. And there was one of the videos that was posted by this individual had Usdumo coming, very excited. Oh, may his dear soul rest in peace. And so he was excited because there's this job he got and he got money so he could pay his rent up front and he was like dishing out money. Mrs. Talk was like looking there amazed. And then there was Ukoko there who was not really friends with Usdumo, but whenever Usdumo had resources, then all of a sudden, she would be friendlier. It was lovely to see you. We grew up watching It Was Good Is Nice and many of these programs on TV. And this is what makes the creative economy. And people don't understand it. People think the creative economy is just for entertainment. Yes, it is entertainment, but it kept us sane during the COVID pandemic.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. We consumed creative products when we were all locked in with our families at home. Our kids enjoyed playing games with their friends that they didn't have access to. That's the creative economy. We read books written by authors. That's the creative economy. We watch live performances from our couches. That's the creative economy, and I could go on. So I want to say the work that you are doing, we appreciate, we acknowledge. And yeah, I want to impress also upon that you keep on doing the beautiful work that we do. We see it in the numbers that, you know, come up at the South African Cultural Observatory when we're mapping and valuing what's happening. This sector is one of the fastest growing sectors in South Africa's economy, contributing almost 3% to South Africa's GDP. That's almost on par with the agricultural sector. That's mainstream economy.
Wow.
And people want to put it in the margins as if, you know, it's nothing. And that 3%, I strongly believe it's much more, you know, but we know what's in the numbers. But the potential outweighs the actual contribution as we know it. It employs 6% of South Africa's population. That's big. But anyway, today was not about me.
As you can hear, she can talk about research. If you want to talk about facts, figures, and data, have a chat with her during the session. You have a glass of wine and something to eat, and then you can chow some data. There's some research as you come in, and there's a lot available as a free download. And okay, Madam Executive Director, let me hold that from you. And this is not Dlamini. Dlamini's plane was delayed. This is Unati Luchaba, and she's. Hey, thank you. It's very warm here. So, yeah, it's not just our sector that's at the margins. It's women that are often at the margins. And the big question is, how do we get women out of the margins? It's nice to see a legend, Yama. Good to see you. As that exhibition, Gwen will tell you how we came about with that exhibition. But I also want to pay tribute to Cynthia Valerie Leroux. That was my mother's name. And it was very strange this morning. I did an interview, and the woman that interviewed me, her name was Valerie on this very topic. And my daughter's name is Valerie. And my mother's second name was Valerie. And I thought, okay, we need to listen to the women in our lives. So Gwen will tell you more about the research online. And over the years, Gwen and I, over the last decade, I think, been involved in lots of research topics. And the challenges and the issues of women in this sector was bubbling until we got to do this research. So if you guys are ready, let me hand over to Gwen online, and then we'll come back inside to listen to Prof. Alethea de Villiers. Yes. Okay, Sis Gwen, I think it's over to you. Okay. Hey, Gwen.
Okay, I'm going to and be quite quick with the presentation. Because I know lots of people have questions and comments. But before I start, yes. Thank you to all the people who have made this possible. And to all of you who have decided to come and give your support. Okay, have we solved the echo problem? I now can't hear myself at all.
Yes, the echo problem is much better now.
But I can't hear myself.
Sis Gwen, so please go ahead with
the
presentation.
Okay, cool.
Please go ahead.
Right. I'm not alone. I am alone, but I'm not alone virtually because I have two colleagues who are also going to be part of this bit of the conversation. I have Tebza Sedumedi, who, if you don't know, as a bass player, then you should. But she's also a number of other things as well, including a composer, a music director, a singer, a recording artist. I could go on. And my other colleague on this virtual panel is NickyB, whom those of you who listen to Kaya FM will be aware of as a highly informed music broadcaster who does some of the best interviews that are around at the moment with musicians you might perhaps not have heard to, but believe me, after Nicky's interviewed them, you will want to hear them. She's also a working DJ. And again, she does loads of other things as well. I'm not allowed to take up too much time, but I absolutely feel honored to have both of these people on the panel with me, particularly because they were in at the start of this research. If we could have the second slide, please. Okay. The first one was just a holding slide for the title, but we really didn't need that. This project began way back in the early 2020s when Samra realized that it only had 18% of female members. And at that point, they commissioned an initial piece of scoping research from a consultancy just to kind of map the field and see what was known, what was not known, and all the rest of it. But for those of us at IKS, this was like opening the most incredibly welcoming door, because we had been, as Andre said, talking for ages about how we do not know enough about where women are in music and what they experience. We sure as heck know they're there, but we don't know enough about them. So after the scoping research, and this is where both us Tebza and NickyB come in, we actually in 2023, almost exactly a year ago, exactly 2 years ago, my maths was never my strong point, we actually had a panel discussion with a very lively audience at Conhill and many, many virtual participants from around the world. And we had Shannon Mode with us from Norway. We had a number of other people just trying to scope the field and see how, if we were able to set up a proper survey, what should we be asking about? And what came out of that panel discussion was we didn't know enough, that very often the women, including the women on the panel, were treated like the housekeepers of projects, even when they were the music director. They were asked to do things like make some food for the rest of the band. We heard some very sad stories, and we heard more when we did the survey, about harassment, about stereotyping, about mansplaining, and about ageism. We heard about poor conditions, unequal pay, and interestingly, and we didn't push this in terms of the research as far as I would like to on another occasion, producer-run studios started emerging as a new site of harassment and a new site of creativity. It was both things. It's a very interesting thing. So we, using the mailing lists and the contacts of many partner organizations, because you know through POPI you can't actually get everybody's addresses these days, but we sent the survey out to them, they sent it out to their contacts. In the end, we got nearly 360 responses, looking at 3 areas: how are women represented in the industry and by media talking about the industry, how equal are their pay and conditions, and how safe are they and how safe do they feel? Next slide, please. Okay, so we got, as I say, nearly 360 responses. 75% of those responding identified as women. And we asked people either what they experienced or what they observed. So the non-women in this case were actually also taken care of. It matters what people see as well as what people experience. The majority were Black, urban, above 36 years of age, which in this industry counts as older. And we may come back and talk about that later, because I think it's pretty young, but still. Working across all genres. Jazz was the largest single genre, but in fact, all the other genres together completely outweighed it. And mainly singer-songwriters, but 60% of the people who responded said they felt stereotyped in their roles. As you can see, even from the people I'm sharing this panel with, the majority of women are not necessarily singers and songwriters, and even if they are, there are other things besides. A minority were instrumentalists or described themselves as band leaders, or were industry gatekeepers, say, in the decision-making parts, or were techs in music. 4% of the people who responded to us played a technical role in music. Pay was unequal. Working conditions were appalling in terms of what was described to us, but the fact is they were appalling for everybody, and that's something else where more research is needed. There is no labor legislation around freelance creative work, so everybody suffers from that. And quite horrifyingly, harassment, and as I have very delicately put it here, worse, was actually rife from both co-players and from audience members. One thing we hadn't expected was the massive impact on women's earning and spending of what's been called elsewhere in the world the pink tax. The things you have to spend on because you are a woman. Women had to spend far more on appearance and attire than men, and we even had people playing in classical orchestras telling us that. They had to spend on childcare, and we know that both genders are parents, but the burden of childcare very often falls on women. And personal safety. If somebody wanted, when a band was on tour, their own hotel room, rather than bunking in with everybody, they quite often had to pay for that themselves. So the pink tax was a big thing we hadn't expected, and I think, again, that's an area where we could be looking much more at what women have to spend in order to stay in showbiz. Where we were very different from international findings, because a lot of this is completely consonant with what the international research finds as well, up as high as there was in the UK a House of Lords special committee on women in music, and they found pretty well the same thing there. But where we were different was that people here got good support from their families, and 90% of our respondents very firmly declared that they felt they belonged where they weren't going anywhere. That for me was a lovely concluding note. Can we have the next slide, please? So when we asked people what they wanted to see, they had a very, very realistic notion of what was going on, what the situation was, and what would help. Their major first demand was to bring creative gig work in terms of labor law, minimum wage legislation, all kinds of other laws into the ambit of the laws that already exist. Because it's freelance, because it's gig work, it's not in there, which means that there's nothing. And our respondents said, we want it in the law, and we want powers of enforcement. That was the biggest single demand. They wanted gender quotas, but they wanted them applied better. Not just count the number of female backing singers on a bill, but actually across roles, so that when you have equity, that means you also have a number of female sound engineers, a number of female roadies. And yes, they do exist, because some of them filled in our survey. And certainly that this also ought to apply in education, where very often women are gently steered towards being singers, whatever else they do. And sometimes it's not that gentle. People wanted gender-blind auditions. I'm not sure that would work so brilliantly in South Africa, because our scene is so small that everybody knows who everybody is anyway, but never mind. They wanted media training, so that reporting of women in music and the portrayals of women in music in things like dramas, where it's always the glamorous nightclub singer, isn't it, guys, was actually improved. And they wanted access to training on music tech, so they could step out of whatever they were confined in and do some other part, or run their own shows, or run their own studios. How many women in this country run their own studios? Not many. And they also wanted gender awareness programs for those involved in organizing and planning music, and codes of best practice. So those were the demands. Next slide, please. However, a survey is limited. Samro's most urgent need was to know where women were, what they were doing, how they organized their businesses. So a lot of things emerged as questions that we weren't in that survey able to answer. One thing that we shared with the international research is that it's the 35 upwards group that always fills in surveys. How do we get out to much younger women who are just starting in their careers and actually tap into their experience and their insights? We know absolutely nothing about certain music communities, and the one that emerged in the survey, and it's probably not the only one, is female performers of Indian heritage. I know of at least 2 ace percussionists who are women in the Durban Indian community. I'm sure there are more than that. We know almost nothing. So why aren't we reaching that community when we do our survey work? Why do we know so little about production studios? They're becoming absolutely essential to certainly the popular music landscape, and we know almost nothing about what goes on there, except when yet another newspaper story appears about some co-composers or co-performers suing a producer because they have not been credited adequately. Nicky raised the issue of ageism very sharply in the first panel. We did not ask about ageism specifically. We should have done so. And I think, again, it's a question that remains to be asked. And something we're becoming aware of from all sides is the impact of this on musicians' psychological well-being. A number of people talked about depression, about leaving the industry because they couldn't take the kind of harassment they were experiencing, all of those. And I think there's a huge piece of research that's actually waiting to be done on musicians' psychological well-being. So that was the research. I'm going to ask Tebza first, I think. Tebza, do you remember that first panel we were on, and what struck you about the kinds of things that were being said from our table and from the audience? What was striking for you about that first panel?
Well, good afternoon, everybody. I am so excited to be part of this again. Sure, Ms. Gwen, I believe that what was spoken in the first round of this sitting is what we are still experiencing now, which is visibility. Visibility is everything, because people don't know you exist, then there's no way that they can come and try and assist. So I think the most important part is to make sure that we are visible. People know that there are women in so many different departments that make the music industry, not only in the spaces of being a performer, but also being behind the scenes. There are so many women that are really holding the fort, but the visibility is not there. So perhaps that is something that we could also talk about. How do we make sure that we are seen? What needs to drive that? Is it only dependent on social media? Is it word of mouth? Is it plugging yourself in institutions and festivals that are around your vicinity, your community, your society? How do we make sure that we are being seen and we are also progressing, in the music industry?
Thank you for that. It was very surprising to me that there were people popping up all over that audience saying, I'm a songwriter, or I work in a studio, or something like that. And these were people we didn't even know, not to mention the number of music students who actually had ambitions to enter those fields, because there were quite a lot of students at that event. Nicky, what struck you about those early days and the kinds of conversations that were being had? You were a virtual participant on the panel and a live participant as well. So what struck you?
Well, hello, greetings to everybody before I say that. And thanks for your question, Gwen. But before I even go there, I'd like to say that I really appreciate the research that was done, that you did. and that I'm shocked by by the outcome, by what you unearthed, but I'm also not surprised. So as much as it's really good to see it on paper, and I actually urge everyone to read the research. I love the fact that you did a people's version that makes it so much more accessible. And, so one doesn't have to feel like one's got to be an academic to actually see what is going on. And I feel that is just a huge step in trying to address some of these discrepancies. What struck me was more the fact that we were giving a voice and not just paying lip service to something that really is a big issue. And I'm going to talk for our country. I know it is around the world, but for our country and our industry. So I think that was an amazing initiative that I really want to credit, and the result of that initiative I need to credit here. And really, I urge everyone to go and see, at least read the people's version. The statistics are, as I say, shocking, even if they're not surprising. It's kind of, I think, what we all knew anyway, so much of it. I do, however, feel, and I think this is part of the process, the first part being the research, the second part being reflecting on what you came up with, and the third part now is the action, and how do we address the action. And I think that's, for me, even in what we discussed, and we did, if I remember correctly, we even spoke about that. We said this can't end here. How are we going to take action? So on that note, if you don't mind, I'd like to just bring up a couple of things. Are we acting? How are we going to act on this research? And in my view, we can act in big ways, which is always great. That's what we're aiming for. But in the same way, it starts with little, small things. And, we can't just assume we're changing things. We have to start right now in how we change things. And I mean, I'll go on, I can touch on many things. You brought up the issue of dressing rooms. How so often the one woman in the band is not given a dressing room. I can tell you for myself as an MC at major events sometimes, I'm not given a dressing room. I've even had to, confront those kind of things. So it is small things like that, but it's also, are women booking women? Are women employing women? How can we start in small ways? I mean, for myself, I have 35 years in this industry. I've dedicated my life to a large extent to promoting South African music. For myself, as you said, I'm still active as a DJ. Why am I still finding myself earning less than I was? And by less, I mean sometimes a quarter or a half of what I was earning 20 years ago when the money was worth more. When I know I add value, why are people bulking when a woman submits her quotation? They don't come back and say, well, we've got a small budget, can we counter offer you? No, they just run away. I look, for example, at Women's Month now.
Yes.
I've had one gig offer for Women's Month, and when I gave my quote, the person ran away. And I know my quote is not that high in the greater scheme of things. And I'm often interested to know, what is a man, with the equal experience or equal value quoting? Why is somebody running away? Same thing during this month. I've had one gig offer, and I've had 3 offers to speak. Why are we not remunerated on such things, or at least towards our costs and our time? These are the kind of things that I think possibly we all face as creatives, but possibly is worse with women, or even from the research, I think it is worse than women. And these are not easy things to bring up, but important to bring up precisely in a forum like this. If I can't speak about such things in a forum like this, then where are we supposed to speak about this? If I'm, I should not feel even to be silenced in such a forum. There is that issue. Do I bring these things up? Will I be silenced or marginalized again because we bring these things up? If I cannot bring up my vulnerability, my truth, this is, in a sense, what I am urging all women and all people who understand the discrepancies and the marginalization. I don't know what words to use. Can we please start speaking up? Can we share the results of the research? Can we encourage each other? Can we book each other? When we fill in funding applications, it always says, how many women will you be employing? Are we just thinking, there's 3 cleaners? There's, what value are we actually bringing when we do employ those women? It's not just to fill numbers, but how are we actually making a difference? And how can we start making a difference in small ways, women to women, and in small ways? I mean, I have been asked to speak at conferences or facilitated conferences where they don't want to give you anything, and then you arrive there and you can see there's a multi-million rand conference happening, and 95% of the people are men, and they drive.
And there's free champagne, but we don't get that.
And drinking Chivas Regal, and you thinking, I use my own money, my own time, my own professionalism to bring value. So I think those are things that we really need to address. And when one of the things it says on the report is, are we ready to make real change? And I'm urging, even if it's in small ways, let's start.
Thank you, Nicky. That was exactly the kind of call to arms that we need for Women's Day, which is so often in itself a tokenistic gesture. To add to your comment, 56% of the people that we surveyed who had been were in their 30s and above, many of whom had been in the industry for 10 years, 56% of them were earning less than 5,000 a month from their music. And I'm sure Alethea is going to talk about the other jobs they have to do in order to make ends meet. But this is one of the symbols. And the other thing I think we have to say is there's a lot of divide and rule among those who employ us. And this thing of, I can get so-and-so for cheaper is divide and rule. And whenever if you are a performer, you grab a gig because they have said, so-and-so wants to charge me so much. And you say, well, I'll do it for a bit less than that. That is a bad labor practice, and it is very, very disloyal to those around you. So I think we need to take an interest in what our colleagues in the industry are doing as well. In the States, they have an organization called We Have Voice, which is a kind of coalition of women musicians. And among the things it deals with, of course, is comparing experiences on what you're getting paid for gigs and what the conditions are around gigs and what the contracts look like, as well as looking at these issues like harassment. So as far as I am concerned, there's a need for organization. There's a need for a serious artists' union, not a government sweetheart or anything else, but a real artists' union in which we should have a place, probably at the leading table. But there's also, and Andre did ask me to talk a little about the painting, so I will very, very briefly do that, because it's part of this. The other thing is we designed this book not just as a lobbying tool or a thing to be read, but also as an educational tool. And the reason it has Judy's gorgeous drawings in it is firstly, because Andre and I were reflecting on the fact that there were many women who had been part of these conversations, such as the late Spongile Khumalo, the late Gloria Bosman, many more, who were no longer with us and able to be part of it. So one thought was they need to be in there somewhere. But the second thought was visibility, exactly what you began by talking about. We do not know who the musicians in our history who happen to be women are. And we thought that by doing, it's not a historical survey, it is not a comprehensive list even of all the splendid people who are around. But if you look at those pictures on the wall, one of the things you will see is that it goes back through history. It goes back to people we know remarkably little about. I mean, so many generations of people in Soweto have talked about Emily Motsialoa as a piano teacher. She was one of the late Spongile's teachers. There is only one photograph in existence of her, only one. People talk about the leading role that the Pan-Africanist Congress played in cultural formations back in the days of the struggle. Who knew that the late Zephaniah Motopeng's wife, Urbania, as well as being his political comrade, was also a choir teacher and organizer? There is just so much that is not known. So one of the reasons we have that folio of pictures in the book, and one of the reasons why they're actually up on the wall for you to look at, is if you're a music teacher, you have some models that you can point your female students at and say, look at this one, look at that one. And that's a huge part of visibility, because I go in sometimes to music classes and all the models of, you know, the standards were written by George so-and-so or Albert so-and-so, and the people who played them were the very wonderful John Coltrane or Miles Davis. But what about all the women who were there as well? We know they were there. Why are they not known? And certainly that is true of our music scene. I wonder if while we are continuing to talk, anybody who has a question can either, if they're on Zoom, type it into their Zoom chat, or if they wish to convey it to the organizers or raise a hand. I would really like to get more people into this conversation. But I'm going to go back to Tebza while we are asking people to do that and say, Tebza, did the results of the research actually confirm things for you? And what do you think is still missing? In other words, where do we go from here?
Quite a lot. Quite a lot is still missing. I think we need to understand that in order to move forward, we must understand where we come from. Hence, I raised the question and the notion of visibility. So, because when you go around and advocate for women, you know, which I try to do most of the time, you realize that people don't even know that women are there in spaces that offer professionalism. You know, that you could get a full band that has engineers, that has a music director that's a woman, which is something that I see that it's so open and it's not seen a lot, especially in the mainstream stages, you know.
Yes.
At least in space, you know, classical music and jazz, you can, you know, come across women that are band leaders or but also that space is very small, you know. But when you get to the mainstream, because now remember the mainstream is where a lot of revenue, you know, it comes about. That's where we get a lot of fluid, I'd say, opportunities as artists to make money and to make a living. So in spaces like that, that's where I think the challenge is, because now you are really fighting and trying to, you know, show that you are the woman for the job, with a lot of male artists, which at most they don't understand why this abrupt, I would call it that, you know, in the system. Because now here comes a woman who says, but I can also, you know, do the very thing that you are doing, and not even coming into play, taking away from them.
Tebza, can I interrupt you for one moment?
Yes.
Can I interrupt you for one moment and say, while you have the stage, tell us a little bit about Ladies on Bass.
Okay. Thank you so much. Well, Ladies on Bass is an initiative. You know, it's a workshop that we curated together with Concord Ngabinde. Power to that, because it's important to also have men supporting women. So it's a space that we created in order to share information, educational material and ways of how to navigate the music industry as a female bass player, because that's the space that I believe that would be able to nudge, this movement of allowing women to be seen and to come across as part of the pie. So we have put together various workshops around Johannesburg, and we are hoping that we will get funding to be able to go around the country and bring together these women, find these women. Like I said, I think with me saying visibility, it shows that I care about us being seen. So we go about and we look for these aspiring and young female bass players to come forth, because we know the role of a bass player in a band, is really to hold and to glue things together. So the more we can lobby for that, the more we can encourage younger, female bass players to come up, to learn, and not only to learn to be bass players, but also to use it as a tool, to get into other spaces in the industry where they can find themselves being leaders, where they can find themselves being in boardrooms where they are bringing about change and advocating for more women to come forth and hold the banner, because as far as I know, the numbers are very low, but Ladies on Bass is doing very well. We are finding these young, jewels that I believe that tomorrow we are going to see a big movement, a big movement and change in the industry. And by the way, I won't be playing bass forever, so.
No, but I hope you carry on for a while longer yet, because many of us enjoy listening to you.
Yeah.
But I have to say, one of the things that came out of the research was some comments that actually, if you play what is perceived as a man's instrument, like bass or drums, it's much tougher for you. You're seen as much more of an interloper.
Yes. But also, I think that also came with understanding that if you don't push yourself, because I could already see the environment was very hostile. The environment was, you have to prove yourself like this, you have to behave in this manner, and there I was, I'm like, I'm such a girl, but I had to switch my mind from that in the beginning to say, okay, I'll portray myself as one of the guys, just behave in a way that would be more acceptable in terms of how I dress. People that know me from the beginning, I was that girl with a t-shirt and jeans and sneakers and dreadlocks because I wanted to fit the narrative, but with time I realized that no, this space actually needs me to be me, and I am a woman. I cannot change that, and I just have to find my power and also introduce it to everybody and say, I am here to stay, and I started changing a little bit of that. The attitude also changed, and I could see a little bit of, reception from people that I thought would be hostile all the way. But so it's that. But the minute you change that narrative on your own, then you are able to start functioning as a woman who has power to stand for something, who has power to stand for what they believe, who can also advocate for other women, to say, just stand your ground, be who you are. We need to be seen. We are part of this ecosystem because we do contribute. We don't only sing, we are co-writers, we are writers, we are arrangers, we are, we study, we do all these things in the music industry that needs us to believe and stand firm for who we are, so that this change can be seen as something that is needed in this fraternity.
Yeah, it's very often, thank you for that. It's very often said, if you don't see it, you can't be it. And certainly that is true of roles in music. So this issue of role modeling the behavior you want to see, but also we know that men are not the enemy, even if in large groups they sometimes behave quite badly. But men are not the enemy. And it's also about people saying, I've discovered that this female member of the band is getting paid a quarter of what I'm getting paid. Come on, guys, this isn't fair. Or do not make those kinds of remarks around our female band member. So there is a role in this for everybody. This is not just women waving flags and saying, you know, men to the barricades, down with men. There's a role for everybody, because the more we can improve working conditions and treatment and behavior in the music industry, the better it gets for all of us. I mean, wages is going to be a very long struggle, but the more we can improve things, the better. Can I ask for questions? I know somebody is going to start on that couch looking very anxiously at their watch soon. So if you have questions to ask the panelists, or if you want to make a contribution about your own insights, please, now is the time to do it. And if you have Zoom, then do it on Zoom and I will see your question. Otherwise, stick your hand up in the room. Do we have any hands up in the room?
Maybe what we could do is go from the cyberspace into the physical space and note some of the questions for a little bit of a later chat, if that's okay. And
why not?
Like us to do, okay, cool. Cool. And I just, my name is Andre and I'm a man. And I apologize and I go as he, him. I think that's the way to do it. And I'm glad, and I'm very glad that Sis Gwen said men are not the enemy. Yeah. So please, when I go to the bar, remember, I'm not the enemy. Secondly, our Tebza, you opened the door when you said men supporting women. And I hope I'm that one of those men. You are. And I wish that there were more of them around. And I see you, our Tebza. I saw you in your dreadlocks and your tackies. And I see you in those beautiful, fabulous dresses that you wear. But I've seen your growth, and it's been amazing. And Nicky, I've seen what you've done for many, many other women behind the decks. And Sis Gwen, you're a leader in terms of research, in terms of the arts. So it's cold in Cape Town, but I'd like to give a warm round of applause to those three leaders that we see on the screen. Some of the things that stood out from that conversation, and one of the hardest ones I had to look at with you, Gwen, was when we had to confront the pink tax and what it really meant and how hard it is and how costly it is. And Gwen, if you could only have the camera in the other direction, as you were talking, there were so many people shaking their heads and and I think as you read the research, you'll see yourselves. When you started out, Sis Gwen, you were also saying that you're not alone, and you were referring to our Tebza and Nicky. But I think there's a song that comes to mind. You are not alone, and I'm here with you. And I think with many women, it's important that you find your tribe, that you find each other, and you support each other. It's crucial. Mm-hmm. Then there's another song, Woman to Woman, but I'm not going to go on a whole musical tangent. I think we're going to hand over to you, Prof.
Yeah,
Alethea.
I was going to say, why don't we go over to Alethea?
Yes, Alethea. And then after that,
can be
please
thinking
prepare.
about questions.
Think about your questions, prepare your questions, and don't ask me anything. So, Prof, could we go to Prof's presentation, please?
Okay, thank you so much, Andre, and thank you for inviting me to be part of this very prestigious and very important conversation. And I'd like to echo what Nicky said previously, the importance of this research which Gwen has shared with us, because I think it's the most important and biggest research on the lived experiences of women in music in South Africa. Internationally, there's a lot of research happening, but there's no other such research happening in South Africa. And I think it's important that we grow from here and actually also action some of the things from that research, which I think is happening as well. Okay, so I'm going to speak on my, let's see if I can get my picture away, then just press the button. There we go. So this research is actually emanated, it's presenting on a paper, a journal article that was published a few years ago. And it emanates from research from my master's student. She's a graduate now, Robin Henneberry. But I was instrumental in getting it into the publication. I take 200 pages and reduce it to 15 pages is always a major feat. And we looked at the idea of protean careers because both of us, Robin Henneberry and myself, we did different things in our life. I started as a piano teacher, became a college lecturer, everything closed down, and then I had to become a subject advisor, and then from there became an academic. And Robin, she was a student, she worked in music tech, she was a part-time lecturer, she also taught online, and so we in various ways, we were like proteas, and Hall uses that idea of protea, because like a protea flower changes shape all the time. And so that is where the idea of protean careers came. But our case study is very small. It's unlike the survey which IKS conducted, which was a massive survey across the country. We looked at 14 early career female musicians in Gqeberha. They were all self-employed, and they were early career people. So they were in their 20s and early 30s. And we just want to say, how did they manage to stay employed? Okay, so there were 14 young women, and we then grouped them according to whether they had a music degree or those who did not have a music degree. But all the musicians and the creatives in the study, they all were very proficient in the instrument. They all had lessons from an early age, so they did various things. Some were vocalists, some songwriter, composers, and they played various instruments. And so just flighting who they were. They were all pseudonyms. I just went alphabetically with the names. Okay, so some teachers, and most of the time the young women who were at a BMAS degree or diploma in music, they opted to be music teachers. But even then, they also did other things like play in gigs or play in an orchestra, and some did arranging on the side as well. And the person worked as a librarian. She was working as a librarian for a community orchestra. So she was keeping the music. That's the librarian. And then the young women who did not have a music degree, they were also working across different kinds of. They played different instruments. You can see Hannah played drums, piano, bass guitar, and also studied in a different field. And so we get Flora, for instance. She is a vocalist who's transitioning into heavy metal, so again changing what she was doing to something else, and also played in a band. And then she's also very creative, doing the makeup and writing poetry, sketching, and also wrote a book. And they indicate Isla, Kira, and Nora. So you can see that most of them did do a lot of different things in their lives, but all of them wanted to be creatives. They wanted to bring out their own music, and what they had to do was they had to do other things like do gigging or be working in a beauty salon, teach, and even do other things. So like even work on a cruise ship, and then they had to have a big repertoire to have so many sets to perform. And what Nora did was, she did something very interesting, was that she also had a DJ incubation program. And she had lots of followers on social media. So I'm not going to go much into the theory of the academic paper, because obviously it's based on a lot of theory as well, but I'll just speak more directly to who the musicians are and then the themes that emerged from this research. So it went through an atlas program, and it was very open-ended. We didn't ask specific questions, but at least wanted to know who they are and their experiences. And the findings were around about the environment, and they found the environment in Gqeberha was not very good for them to perform their music, because often there weren't enough venues and they weren't booked enough, and also that they themselves were not always aware of how to negotiate a contract, and someone would book somebody and then say, oh, but we don't have a budget. But they wanted so much from the artists, but they didn't want to pay what they deserved. Or else they were booked, and then the artists had to pay all the musicians, like the band had to be paid. And in the end, they had to walk away with no money themselves, which was very unfortunate. Education, there was the university education, any education that received formal education, they found that there wasn't always an alignment with what they'd learned at university or in other, but they learned online, and they also went to do short courses and learn from each other. So they learn through life experiences and see what other people are doing. So yeah, and then the creative skills, they found that they all felt that they were very creative, and they felt they were more, they actually saw themselves as being creative and not as business women. So these are the respondents in our study, the 14 young women that were interviewed. So they did not see themselves being overly with business skills, but they did also do lots of creative things which are not related to music. For instance, like designing album covers for their friends, or designing costumes, sewing costumes, and doing choreography for themselves and for other singers. So that they did lots of creative things, editing videos, but not necessarily composing new music, which is actually what they wanted to do. And then when it came to entrepreneurial traits, which is a very important, if you want to go to the literature, knowing entrepreneurial skills is very important, and they found that, but the respondents or the participants who did not have a music degree, they were actually much more clued up about marketing and branding. They saw themselves as a product, as it were, and how they positioned themselves in the marketplace. Whereas the participants who had a music degree, they often went into teaching, and they felt it was a safe space, and they'd go to school, have student pupils, and then build a practice. But to be out in the open world, those participants, they really needed to be able to have an image of who they were, whether it was their hairstyle, their clothes, and so on. And then copywriting was a big issue for them because of the copyright laws. Now, this study was conducted in 2020, and so I was reporting on something that on that time, and they said that South Africa does not have a law stating how much artists can earn per minute for music that is aired on the radio. Now, in contrast, in the United Kingdom, an artist can be paid about £37 per minute of radio airtime. So an up-and-coming artist has to register with SAMRO, and you need so much money paid in royalties to remain a member of SAMRO. But then, will the bigger radio stations play their music? And the often answer is no. So it's a small community radio, so have a less profit, and so they get less money in royalties, and then that sort of like compromises their membership to SAMRO. They don't earn money from making music. And that is why they have to turn to all these other sources of revenue to make ends meet. And then it was a return on investment. And as I said previously, all of these young women they started playing instruments. Some as young as 4 years old, they started playing an instrument. They sang in a church choir, so they honed these skills over time. And they were still investing in themselves. And some of them felt, that they just did not have a good enough return on the investment, the amount of money that they put in. Hiring somebody to, one person actually said, Clara said, it's hectic, processing and editing of videos, that's time consuming and expensive. And then it ends up being free content after all those hours of work. So you put a lot of time and years go by with no income and just doing it for love. And then somebody else, one of the other participants said that she paid someone to develop a website for her. I mean, that's cost thousands of rands, and then still she didn't have enough followers after all of that. And then there was all the free performances. Oh, please do this for charity. You know, it's so then there it goes, no money. But like Flora said, she loves it so much she will do it for free. But I mean, that's not a good idea. And Hannah also said, I don't necessarily always get paid for gigs. And Clara said, they think, okay, but we are paying for 1 hour or 2 hours of you playing, but it's not that. They're also paying for 20 or 30 years of you practicing, playing your instrument. That's what they're actually paying for. But people don't see it like that. And then many of them also felt that their careers are being paused. And that was not only because of the pandemic, it was just that they just felt they didn't get further. You know, playing in a certain club and then it's not going forward in their careers. And there was a bit of despair. And I think Gwen also spoke, and Nicky spoke about people being despondent and just being depressed. So their well-being was also being affected by being by pursuing a career of being a creative, right? And then, so in the time when some of these like Anna said that she was quite happy she was a teacher, but that is but that's also putting her career as a creative person on pause, because she wants to be a creative person, but now without her opportunity, she's just satisfied not to be a teacher, but still it's not what she really wants to do. And then Kira said that she would actually still go back to the cruise ships, and she does go to cruise ships because many of these of our participants are also Facebook friends. Some of them are graduates of our university, and also one knows them in society as well. So they go back to cruise ship working and to earn money. And then I went to, because I want to open up the floor for discussion, so I won't go through all the details. And there's another theme that emerged was the ambition. And all the participants, they were ambitious. They wanted to not be gig artists or cover artists. They wanted to perform music and to make it out big in the world. But they were not signed up to any record labeling company. They were independent. They were getting the music off the ground themselves. And then the other theme that emerged for this Atlas TI, analysing the findings, the open-ended discussions, because we let it speak freely in the interview, was technology and how they use technology. So in the absence of actually having had an education which would prepare them for an industry, like with business skills, marketing, they also learned online. And so they would look at short courses online, and even just go and research things online to see how do I draw up a contract. Because I mean, and even now, as time has gone on, I mean, you can find a contract and you can just tweak it. It's online. And they use technology also, like Facebook and Instagram, social media, to put their music out there. And some of the artists also had a following overseas. So nobody might be booking them in Quebec, but online, they had quite a big following internationally as well, which was just a boost for them, for their confidence. And then most of them used home equipment because they didn't have access to the studio. When I work at the university, and I'll say our recording studio doesn't produce that nice clear sound, and we don't hire it out at the moment for people to use, outside people to use to record music, but in any case, the people, like Clara said, she used the Hawaii P30 phone to shoot her videos. And she also used software programs for composition. And then she recorded videos, and her husband managed the sound recording. So it was like just in-house kind of at-home kind of videos that were shot. And she said that Dana said that one did not have to depend on a large record label company to release one's music, because SoundCloud was an appropriate platform for this. And Gina said that if I don't have a keyboard, I can just do everything on my laptop. And sometimes I use my cell phone as well to produce the songs. So what came across, I mean, so it's not a theme there, but if you just listen to the responses, is that these young women are very resilient. They were determined. They recognized some of the setbacks that they experienced, but they didn't let any of that deter them. And the study that IKS did was the big survey looked at more things. This study looked at just the protean careers. What else are people doing to survive? But we didn't drill down into. It wasn't as intensive and comprehensive as your study. We looked at the wage gaps and gender. We thought that maybe gender discrimination would come out of the study, but they didn't mention any of that. Okay, and also the technology they used, Facebook and live streaming to get the music across. And then when it came to experiences, accomplishments, and career navigation, they actually felt that they had an identity as a musician. Some of them, like Nora, she established herself as a deep, soulful house DJ. And Dana was comfortable with her identity as a music teacher. And Eva specialized in teaching students who find learning music challenging. So she specializes in something. So these are just some of the responses, but they felt that they had their niche. And they were content with their niche as well. And then they also shared the importance of networking, of knowing people, and I think that came out also from the other speakers as well, of getting to know people, networking, and also then hiring each other for things. And as Lyra, who works in the classical music industry, she also shared the value of somebody just stepping up and giving one an opportunity. And because somebody did that for her, she's going to play that forward as well. And then adaptability and transferring of skills. So they all were able to do that because like Clara performs numerous tasks in the arts field. She sews gig outfits, creates artwork for album covers, and she also does makeup and hair, sews all her costumes herself. And she says, you are the creator, you are the performer, you have to market yourself, you have to produce. A lot of time and blood and sweat and tears go into it. And Hannah also performed numerous tasks, such as being an instrumentalist in a band, assisting with the sound setup, helping other artists with advertisements, posting content online, and arranging performance slots for other artists and herself. And so, what we can conclude, and I must move my slides, is that all these musicians, they experience a protean career because of the precarious employment environment. So to be able to have a constant source of income, they have to do various different things. But they're also very resilient, and they are able to transfer the skills, and they can network for employment. And all of them are proficient on an instrument. And with music teachers, there's a greater career stability. I mean, so there's a regular income. You have 5 pupils at one school, and then you're going to get your money every month from those pupils, and you can build your studio. And all of the participants are employable. We don't know how much they actually earn a month, whether some of them are still living at home, and whatever. We don't know that. We didn't ask about that. And they were all able to learn informally through short courses, online resources, and experiment with technology and learn the business acumen. So I should have concluded with one of my previous bullet points to say that they are resilient, and that they and I admire them for that they are so resilient to just to persevere. And thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for that. Yeah, women are exceptionally resilient. I think if we could focus on the previous slide a bit with the tech team in terms of the findings. And there's a lot there: environment, education, creative skill, entrepreneurial. All of those are quite important. The one that stands out for me is return on investment in a major way. Do you do it for love, money, or charity? And I think it's sometimes all of the above and more. And I once had to write a paper on ROI And I thought, like, Roy, who's Roy? Waar is Roy? You know, like this Roy thing. In our sector, Roy, some of you will shake your head, you can't find Roy very easily. It's a pity that he's named after a man, but anyway. We now going to go to the panel here in the physical side of things. From one strong woman, Unati, thank you for keeping the seat warm. Lou Dlamini has arrived, so Lou, if you mind joining me over here on the couch. And all of those are over there, and if you could reflect on this panel discussion and on the two papers. Welcome.
Thank you.
Who would like to start?
Please go ahead, because I know you're ready. You like
I'm not really.
Ready like a battery. Come on, Lou.
From Professor Alethea's research, what I could come up with was the music careers paused, because I come from that generation that has a lot of people with careers paused. I think in too many languages in such a way that sometimes I trap myself. I sometimes don't even know what I'm saying. So most of the times I just sit down and write what I would love to talk about. So if you can just bear with me, I'll read you. It's almost something that saddens me, because we are unable not to look at the ills of the past if we want to improve our industry. And I'm unable to separate my struggles in the music industry from my past. A past which sometimes seems not different from the present. Watching the women in live music research brought back too many emotions: tears, joy, irony, and several that I can't even explain myself. How was I feeling at this time? Was it anger? What was it? The challenges of the past were resurfacing, and I knew there is a lot I have to think about. There is a lot I have to decide, even as myself, and looking at people around me. I stayed in Johannesburg for the longest time. Having to go back home, it was a struggle it was like a career paused. And last week I was invited to contribute to a theme about biodiversity of our oceans at UKZN. And this highlighted the biodiversity in this industry as being similar to that in the ocean. And when I listened to our Tebza, she can even be my daughter, but Mzumbuza our Tebza. She said, a musician sounds good alone, but better with others. Yes. And I always say, in this school of life, musicians move as a collective while shining as individuals. And having to think of biodiversity, I realized that the humans, especially South Africans, our families are a coral reef. So once we lose that, and most of the people, like I come from a family, my music was taught to me orally by my family, my brothers. And I saw them struggling in this industry, and some of them were paid with liquor. And it always worries me sometimes when I love the theme, I love that we are fighting, we are women, and we know that we have struggles as women. But my problem is, have we looked at the traumas that our brothers really faced? As somebody who was there, I think I saw things happening to them in such a way that maybe if I can have time to sit down with them, I will be able to ask them, is it why you are unable to support us and protect us like this? Is it because of the traumas that we are not willing to listen and sit down and maybe help you go through them? That's all these things came with. It's a long thing that I wrote, but I'll be finishing in time. So I'd rather maybe I'll send to you later, and you can help me later maybe, and help me like go through every emotion that these topics are making me go through. As an elderly artist in the industry who never got a formal education on music. Fuba tried, but when Fuba tried, we were the generation of revolution first, education after. So it was the generation that came after us. We were happy when we saw them going to institutions. Tina, we were just happy with taking courses there, and ending up doing sound healing, so that it's closer to music, but we cannot afford to go to institutions. So I would love us, as much as we talk about, I was happy to also see that there is so many students who are certificated, who can be able to teach. But the problem is, we don't have structures where they can actually be sent to go and teach. So the certificates are on the walls at the end of the day. So those are the things we need to think about too.
True, yes. Wow.
Mamlu, we hear you. And you know, like in research, there's quantitative and there's qualitative.
Yeah.
And whenever I had to read your reports, I could hear you. And if you guys online, you'd see the audience. We can hear you. Tutu?
My head is about to pop because I'm like nodding so hard to everything that Mama Louis say. Because it's funny, because I wanted to touch on education and then you mentioned FUBA. Because I also studied at FUBA for 1 year. And then you say that you were the students of like revolution. So were we. I went to FUBA in 1997. And I didn't learn anything, you know, because we were constantly striking. We were constantly striking because there was Ubaba Spamla. I think it was Spamla. Yes. He was the head of FUBA at the time.
He chased me every day out of class.
You see?
Surrender Ready is the one who used to give me private classes.
You see what I mean? So the students were always fighting that we need a change of leadership. Ubab Spamla, as much as we tried to respect him, you know, he's a fantastic author and everything, but he was old and thinking old ways, and the students were constantly fighting. So I did 1 year at, like, I finished, like I said, I always say that in my family, everybody has a degree. It's like a thing, like you go to university. So I knew that I wanted to do something in music. I didn't know that I wanted to become the jazz singer that I am today. But after high school, I was like, I can't study law. My brain is not braining towards those kinds of things. I want to sing. And then I found FUBA, and I was really happy that I can go to an academy and learn about music. And I was there for 1 year, and I really didn't learn anything. And I was very lucky when I got to FUBA, Jeff Mapaya was a teacher there. And because of Jeff, I ended up at UCT Music College. But I arrived at UCT Music College like so not ready. Like you can't go into to study medicine without good metric results. I had nothing. I had absolutely no knowledge of where C was on a piano or on a staff paper. Like I knew nothing. And when I look back, and also now that I live in Belgium, and the thing that makes me sad and angry is that in this country we have no shortage of talent.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like the talent in this place, from like that little child who's like, I'm sure there's a beat going inside. Like you watch on social media, little people this age, they have a groove, they can dance, the talent is immense. The problem we have in this country is that the education doesn't start there. We need to get the education to start there, you know. I get so angry with my own children who are growing up in Belgium, who have all these resources handed to them. My daughter, there's academies of music where music education is available to everybody. From the age of 5 to 95, you can go and study music, and it's cheap because it is subsidized by the government. So everybody has access to music education. So, you know, we take my daughter to the school, and she heard a sound that she's never heard before, and it was a bassoon. And she went, and they showed her the bassoon. They showed her how it works. She took it, this big sound came, and she was like, oh yeah, I want to try this. And bassoons are expensive. Like any music instrument is expensive. The school bought that child a bassoon that she can rent. So we rent the instrument for 60 euros the whole year. And she can keep it, and it's hers. She can keep it, you know? I mean, she can keep it until she's in that school and then give it back. This child played the bassoon for 3 years, and she's like, I'm done. That was enough, you know? And I get so, like, if every kid in South Africa had a chance to get a bassoon, to take it home, and to have to have access to a piano, to have access to the drums, to have access to the guitar, and a good guitar teacher and a good piano teacher from the time they are 5 years old, we would be so far ahead, because the talent in this country, and right now, the world is absorbing South Africa.
Yes.
Like, all our dance moves come from, all the dance moves, everybody's trying to dance like us.
Lots of nods in the room.
You know? So if we could get the education system right, Lord knows, I have no idea how that's going to happen, but that's really one thing that I'm really passionate about, that if we could fix that.
I don't know who Lord is and who Lord knows.
Can I ask something?
Okay, Lou, we're going to come to you. Can the person that has the roving mic, we're going to go to the audience. Before we go to the audience, we're going to go back to the online panel, because there's some real gems. My brain is also braining, don't worry. And I love that the family's the coral reef. So,
it is.
Mamlu, you go ahead. And then we're going to go online and then back to the audience quickly.
I was just thinking, since you say our music should start early, I mean, if our kids can start with music early, South Africa has a problem. We have so many cultures here. I think if we need to improve on anything when it comes to this industry, we need to start learning our own music, because right now we're talking about music that is packaged for us to consume the way the Western world wants us to consume. It was really lovely when growing up, because I stayed with so many cultures, so I could sing a Tutu song, I could sing a Venda song, I could sing that, but I didn't concentrate on the sounds, which is what I think are our healers. Those are the things that we need to learn. I'm not really worried about a child starting early, but let every type of sound, South African sound, be a part of a child's life.
Sure.
That's true. It's only now that I used to have an auntie who lived in Rangwana, like in the village. And if I was writing a lyric in Sepedi, she was the one I would call. Sadly, she passed, and I'm like, now I have nobody to call to ask, how do I say this? Only now I'm like, gosh, I didn't learn the reto in my mother tongue. I you know, only now I'm like, so it's true. We should learn our own.
Those that have come before. Sis Gwen, we're going to quickly go to you on the panel for very brief inputs if you have, and then we're going to come. Titus, you've got the microphone. So introduce yourself, input or a question, if we could keep it brief. But should we just quickly flip to you, Sis Gwen, or should we go to the people in the audience?
I've got one Zoom hand. Really bad echo. Can the echo go again, please? Okay. There is one Zoom hand up. I'm going to ask Mpo if she could or he could type their question into the chat line, and we will deal with that. I have 3 things to say, and I'm saying them as an educator now, not as a music person. The first is, I would not be a researcher in anything if I had not grown up at a time and in a place where I had completely free education until university level, and free libraries, and reduce subsidized public transport and all of that, and then a grant which covered almost all. But, you know, I was an 18-year-old and I spent it on other things sometimes, but a grant that covered almost all my student expenses and got me to a university like Oxford. And nothing, I would not be, my parents are factory workers, both of them. I would not be who I am today if it were not for free education. I wish this damn government would stop looking at it as a cost and see it as an investment. That's the first thing. The second thing is, if you wonder why our children cannot understand, don't have basic comprehension on reading, it is because of an evil thing called premature unilingualism, whereby we push them into English rather than letting them get good at their home language. Once you all have mastered any language, you can master any other much more easily. Children who grow up speaking Sepedi will be your best English students as well, because they have the confidence and they have, if I can get all scientific, the pathways in their brains for using languages properly. And the third thing I would say is, as a teacher, the first thing you learn about being an effective teacher is find out where your students are, and that is where you start. But somehow in this country, as both Tutu and Lou have pointed out, it ain't happening. That's my two penneth on all of that.
Our Tebza or Nicky, do you want to do a quick comment before we go? Anyone in the audience, are you ready? Our Tebza, you cool? Or you want to say something?
Yes, please. I don't know. I feel like I was supposed to be in Cape Town. Because how I feel about this topic, it what drives me, you know. What Ostudue, like what you spoke, is exactly, you know, how I feel. If education could start at an early age when it comes to music, we would be having not only women that are engaging and being part of a music society where they make, you know, the decisions and they're able to navigate their careers, but it would also heal what Malu was saying, you know, because now we as women, remember, as I'm going to speak as a woman who plays an instrument. Now, the threshold is the male, you know, musicians in the music industry, and now we are forced to look at them and work and move at their pace. But that's not who we are. We are not coming into this industry so that we can fight the same spaces that men are occupying. We are saying just open the space so that we have our place and our voices heard. So now, if we had men that, you know, understood that we are not coming in to take what is theirs, I'm sure other issues that we experience as women in the music industry wouldn't be happening because of like a harassment, for example. They would understand that, you know, we are women, we are the same as their sisters, we are the same as their mothers, their aunts, so that the respect that they give to their families should be the same respect that they give to us as female musicians. So I hope that also young women that want to be part of the music industry, we really emphasize the importance of education, because I think with education, we are also now opening up platforms where there's a need for representation. You know, there are women that are educated, not only in the music sector, but also in other fraternities, so that they can be our mouthpieces, because we are not considered as professionals. We don't even have a body that we you know, that speaks on our behalf. We are not seen as people that are adding into the GDP of the country. So I think if education is, you know, is preached and it's also encouraged at a younger age, we'll be able to solve half the problems that we go through as musicians, especially women musicians in this country.
I think Nicky, then Sis Gwen has got her hand up there. Nicky, do you want to say something before we go to Gwen, and then we're going to come inside?
Yes.
It's Gwen with the hand up.
Oh, Gwen, go for it, Gwen. I think Nicky's frozen. It's cold in Joburg.
I want to, this is research. Just can you hear me? I'm not sure if the internet connection has gone a bit unstable, but I hope I'm back. The one thing is that coming back to the issue of, when we fill in funding applications and so forth, there is how many women are you employing? I would be very interested to know that in funding applications, whether there is a quota that is actually given to women who've applied for funding. That for me would be quite an interesting thing to find out. And the other point I wanted to bring up was just a more general point. We are always told that as women, we are strong. It's our duty to be strong. It's our duty to take care of others. It's part of our culture to take care of one another, which is great. And women are strong. But from that strength, I would encourage us to say, when it is not fine, when it is not suiting us, and again, to make an appeal to stop the silencing, to stand up and say, I might be a strong woman, but actually this doesn't work for me. Actually, this isn't serving me. Actually, this is impacting my mental health. And I would encourage us to not always say, it's okay, it's okay. And I think that is something as women that maybe we have to address as well. Thank you.
Okay, I'm just going to come back in again. Nicky actually reminded me of something else I wanted to say, which is it's thoroughly admirable that the women that Alethea interviewed were so resilient, but it's actually rather sad because it seems that many of them had no choice but to be resilient. You don't survive otherwise. But what I have here is a question from Mpo, which I hope some people can actually answer in concrete terms. Mpo would like to find out whether there are organizations that assist musicians to become qualified songwriters. And if anybody knows of any such organization, whether you're in the audience or on the panel, please help Mpo with that information. That's all.
Gwen. Nicky, your question, the one on the funding and applications, there's some strong woman in the audience that's very au fait with application processes and she's frowning at me from different parts, and that's Monica Newton. But she's going to speak a little bit later and deal with that question, don't worry. Now can we go to our very patient and cold in-studio audience? Is there anyone that would like to comment or say something? Because there was a lot of heads nodding. You've got one hand over there, 1 and 2, and someone rubbing their nose. Okay, just 1 and 2 at the moment.
Good evening, everybody.
Please introduce and. Yeah.
My name is Luleka. I'm called Lou.
Hey, Lou.
I do apologize for having arrived late, but I know that the time I arrived was the time for me to be here. I may have missed certain topics that have been covered, but my interest is with everything that I've heard and the cries of women in music. What I'd love to hear is, what is it that they've picked up has changed in the music industry? In the business terms, it said the space has been disrupted through innovation. And in that context, what do the women who feel so strongly about the inclusion of women, what have they picked up? And are there any gaps that they can tap into in line with the demand of, first of all, education, in terms of being the facilitators of education, whether lecturing or in whatever shape or form, and in receiving that education in the context of students, and then what the larger audiences require. So if, for example, the women musicians are not being considered, their quotations are not being considered, that audience that they were quoting to serve, how can they bypass that quotation system to reach that audience? What is it? I'm looking into power. Music is power, music is life. And if these women are not being used, there are people who are missed, who could have been healed through their voices, who will never be healed unless they hear those individual or collective voices. So how can they bypass all these red tapes and innovate and get to that audience? And I love what was said earlier, which I picked up personally, to say South Africa is on the spotlight. South Africa is the darling of music. So as we are in South Africa right now, we are in the ripe space for them to disrupt it anyhow. Can we look into that and tap into the innate power of these powerful women so that they can just move with that wave?
Thanks, Lou.
Hi, everyone. My name's Lauren Hendricks. I am 26. I think it's important to say that I'm still young, apparently. I'm a jazz singer. I came out of the College of Music as well. Did the whole undergrad, master's thing, everything. I think I'm maybe coming from an educational perspective as well as maybe as Tutu said. Yes, education is important, but what are we teaching them in the spaces? I think is even more important. Something that is also a theme that maybe I'm sort of exploring as an artist now is, telling the untold stories, as Malu said as well. For me, as a woman, there's a lot that we don't know. There's a lot of artists maybe that are still in their paused era. There are lecturers maybe that are teaching us who are in their paused era because they don't see themselves going further. That's what I've experienced, maybe receiving that, and it's sad to see. And it's not great also because it's like, am I gonna be like that? Where to next? So for me, there's a lot to touch on, but I think representation is one. Telling untold stories, especially as a young person. I just, thanks to Andre, I just also did a tour, thanks to Constance SA, where I did all original compositions of colored women, right? In South African jazz, which I think is so important and not heard of. And it's not spoken about. And there's so many of us. And I think that, what are we teaching our kids? Who are we speaking about? Are we speaking about the people in the exhibition? Or are we speaking about the John Coltrane's and the Miles? Are we just regurgitating the same thing? So that, I think, is a major, major thing. As, education is important, but what are we teaching our kids is even more important.
Cool.
Brilliant. Is there another input from the floor? Maya, with the youngest audience member strapped to a chest.
Hi everyone, my name is Maya Spector. Oh goodness, sorry. Wants to sing also. All the panelists have given me a lot of reflection today, and the audience members as well. And I think the thing that I wanted to sort of pose out there, because I thought it was the right place to do it, with all the wonderful women in the audience and men, of course. But I'm a little bit in a pause at the moment with my career because of something that happened. And I'm wondering, what are the sort of ways that some of the other females were able to navigate the space when they had their children? And how did they manage to get out of that pause? Or did they go through a pause as well? It's a simple question, but quite an overwhelming question as well.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And as soon as you asked that question, there was a pregnant pause in the room. And Lauren, it's amazing how we connect to other things. Your reflection on the exhibition. On that exhibition, you will see Sibongile Khumalo, and her most famous album for me is Untold Story. And things are connected. So now I think let's return to the panel, and then we're going to go online, unless there's any other burning questions, because there's still a performance by someone later that we need to clear the room, have a bite to eat and watch. So any burning questions, Monica?
Thank you, and I suppose it's a response to Nicky, if that's appropriate.
Cool.
But also just an observation from somebody, Monica Newton from the National Arts Festival. I have no creative talent whatsoever, but my one superpower is getting stuff done.
Wow, we need that.
Except, and this is the point I wanted to raise after I've responded to Nicky's question, is there are, in my specific knowledge, no focused funds for women in the arts in any real or substantive way. There are broad government targets that government is meant to meet across a variety of different programs, which speak to the numbers of female and youth beneficiaries. So you'll hear percentages like 30, sometimes 40, or 35%. So that's an aspirational aspect. So, Nicky, it's not so much of a quota as it is a manner in which criteria are applied to review applications generally. So for those of you that were working with the MGE applications recently, there was a whole component that basically said, how do your programs impact on the following? The National Lottery asks the same questions. So it's more about a lens through which proposals are viewed and adjudicated rather than a quota. Except in the case of government procurement, whereas an empowerment company that is owned by women, you immediately head to the top of the list because your BEE score is going to be so much better than somebody else's. So there are points in the system where it will benefit you. But in other cases, it needs to be much more strongly represented in response to a criteria. That would be my suggestion. So it's almost a comment, Andre, and you'll call me to order, but I have occasion to work with a lot of other administrators and have recently been touching base with a whole range of people who are administrators, who are getting chewed up and spat out by our community. And they are almost universally women because of how we treat administrators and how administrators are viewed in the system generally, which is generally well below creative talent, probably as it should be. But I think that if there's an adjustment, as Gwen suggested, to how we treat each other in the system, then there are also ways in which we need to project to each other about supporting. Because these are tough jobs, one way or another. So what might be very interesting, and this really throws forward to a bigger research question, Unati, is the general experiences of women in the sector in occupational classifications, management, creatives, and others. And so building on this research base may well be a very interesting way of creating another lens through which we see our sector, because statistically, we are good employers of women and young people, but do we treat women and young people well when we invite them into our sector? I think we might have some fairly shocking results if we ask that question. Thank you.
Monica, I can't call you to order. I know some of the women that you speak about, and I get calls from them. And it's hard, especially at the higher echelons. If we do if we do the research and we look at the stresses and the strains from the artists through to the administrators, when you are the new woman in a position that runs a big organization, I don't want to be in your shoes, and I wouldn't like to be in your shoes as a woman, and I could never imagine what it's like. And I'm not speaking to you.
Yeah.
I'm speaking to many other women that step into leadership positions, that try and get things right. And they also need to find their tribe. Okay, on tribes. We're not going to get tribalist here. Let's reflect internally. Alethea, you, Lou, Tutu, and then we're going to go to end off with you guys online there. Alethea?
I would, if we take industry, if I can, you ask how do we even adjust with pause. So if I take education as an industry as well, I'm not a performing artist, I've never been a performing artist, I've always been in the sphere of education. But at some point in my life, I was also a young mother, and my life was on pause, but also because of government legislation. When music posts were just frozen, I was on the redeployment list for 10 years. And in that time, my husband left me as well. Yeah, but what I can say that the only thing which, well, besides God and God's grace, is a support network and a mother-in-law who looked after my children for me when I had to go and study further. And when I came and when I had to lecture, those horrible hours, day starts at 7:45 and ends at 6:30, just lecturing one student after the other, a class after the other, and you don't have enough time to have a decent lunch, and you just eat a pie and Coke. Yes, whatever but in any case, but then I had to come home on a Monday night, and my mother-in-law had a warm plate of food for me, waiting for me. Without the support network, one cannot function as a woman. And it's only when our children became older and all those things, when you have to sit there at the parties and the homework, all those look and say words that they have to learn, and you still want to study, because the only thing for me was education was always very important, because education was the way to better myself. So I wasn't dependent to look for somebody to save me, because others was a no-go thing for me. I didn't want to be saved. But my takeaway is that you need a support network, somebody to look after your children while you can do something else. And being a pause is also, in a sense, good. Motherhood for me, even though I'm like a professor of music now, and those hours I was speaking to Andre earlier, 60-hour weeks. We just a 60-hour, those long days of working hard to achieve things, and all those rejections. This paper, for instance, wasn't reviewed for 2 years, and then they couldn't find a second reviewer, for instance. But all of those things. But being a mother is important also. And I think we mustn't actually say that one just has to keep on going, because we are women, and being a mother is a very important role also, and one can also use that as part of your creativity going forward, I think. But a support network, and also owning being a woman in everything, being a young girl, being a mother, and later on being a granny. It's all part of being a woman, and we grow through all of that. It helps one with all our relationships if we actually have gone through all of those stages in our lives, I think. Yeah,
I think, Maya, you two are going to have a chat after this. You can see the connection.
And earmuffs for the baby.
Go for it, Tutu.
Earmuffs for the baby, because sometimes grandmother is busy, granddad is busy, and you don't have the luxury of not taking the gig. Earmuffs, put them on your back, and you go on stage and you do it.
Yes.
Or if you're lucky, you arrive and I don't know, the sound engineer's girlfriend is there, and they offer to take your crying, screaming baby in their arms while you do your 1 hour set. So earmuffs.
Earmuffs, we got that. Lou, beyond earmuffs?
Most of our children grew up at the backstage.
Yeah.
And your friends are always the ones who are taking turns to help and assist. And believe me, beauty emerges in collaborations, because there is collaborative bringing up somebody, bringing up a soul. And with our music, it's how we create communities, you know.
Yes.
Songs, for me, songs showed me the landscape of our country. They told me, where are we standing as a nation? Do you still remember? Hey, babo, oh, babo, hey, nga, getting a sango, yeah, I knew there was colonization when I heard that.
Yeah.
And it's songs like those, but we miss that because from 2003, I stopped watching TV because I couldn't see myself, I couldn't see my mother, I couldn't see my sister, I couldn't see my brother on TV. I didn't know who they portraying. So I think if we can also start with those things of making sure we take over those spaces where we take ourselves back to those televisions, you know, see a woman, a normal woman, you don't have to be fancy to be a South African, you just have to be South African, you know, and I think we should collaborate more.
Yes, for sure.
And I've never shared a platform with Lou without you breaking into song. Let's go to to Gwen, to you and your team over there, and then we're going to wrap up.
Can I go last? Because I've got something more general to say.
Quick one-liner, boom, boom.
Okay, I'll start. Let's keep that conversation going, because that's how we will know how far we come and how far we need to go. Let's encourage women to speak up. Let's study. Let's encourage women to play instruments. Let's encourage women to carry on sharing their stories through song, through collaborative efforts like we just right now. I believe that actually this lies on the backs of women. The change that we want, it is going to come, you know, from women.
Again, I just want to thank all these amazing women that are on this panel and the amazing men that are supporting the cause, if I can put it that way. And again, I'm always one, let's speak up, let's encourage each other to speak up, let's keep having this, you know, I'm looking at Tebza and the way she was explaining her story of just getting on with it, finding alternatives and not being scared to do it. And I think the more of us that do that, the more inspiration it gives to the others. Thank you all. It's really been informative and inspiring.
Okay, first, obviously, thanks. And I have to thank the IKS team, because there wouldn't have been research without it. And that's a support group too. But I want to end up by saying something about research. We've talked about research as many things. We've talked about it as a lobbying tool. We've talked about it as education. Of course, it also exists to develop theory. But there's a scholar I very much admire. She happens to be a woman, who is Professor Stella Nkomo at Pretoria University. And she once wrote a marvelous essay about interviewing and why we interview. And it was all about research as listening. And I think for a music gathering, that's something we've got to bear in mind. When you interview people, when you survey people, they feel heard. And now we're carrying the responsibility of making sure other people hear them too, particularly decision makers.
So As I said earlier, my brain is braining. The family is a coral reef. You all have to find your tribe. And you need to support that tribe when your tribe is in need of support.
Yep.
You need to be that support networks. And you need to feed that support networks. And that's part of the creative community. And you need to sustain them. And sometimes you need more than a pie and a Coke. And that's why we're going to end up with Monica, who's going to pay for the pie and a Coke that we're going to have today. And I'm sorry for you guys online. It has to be a cyber pie and a cyber Coke. So Monica, would you quickly say the thanks and get us to bite something to eat and have something to drink? Here's a mic here. Oh, there's one there. Should I chuck it? I speak loudly. What are you trying to say?
You're a sports person, Andre. So
Oh,
yeah.
yes.
I don't want to cast any shade, but I do worry about your aim. So for the second time this evening, I'm Monica from the National Arts Festival, but here actually today representing a project called the Festival Enterprise Catalyst, which, like all good projects, is actually part of a group. Concerts SA, the Nationale Theaterinitiatief, which represents a number of Afrikaans festivals, Woordfees, Art, KAK&K, and Suidoosterfees. And we've all got together to do something different. And as we got together and made a decision that we wanted to support new work and touring work through our festivals and through the Concerts SA program, we approached the Jobs Fund to say, right, we've raised some money, can you match it? And believe it or not, they did. We are their first live event performing arts project. We're learning a lot about each other along the way. Yeah.
Don't look at me.
It's good, but it's complicated. But one of the things that we've very focused on is bringing people together in conversation, because our industry is networked. You are only as strong as the people that you know.
Yeah.
You are only as successful as the networks that you have.
Yeah.
And one of the things that networks like this enable us to do is to learn from each other. So thank you so much for organizing, SACO for supporting a project which has both enabled us to come together, to learn together, to talk to each other, and hopefully transfer what we know into doing, which is now the next big step. Now that we know women go through this, now that we know what the experience is in the dressing room, what does that mean for Monica at the National Arts Festival?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. We are women, but are we treating the women that we host as well as we can or we should? Are we as patient? Do we give enough time? Do we spend enough time focusing on these things? So there's a point of introspection here, but there's also a point, and I think Gwen's point was also a point of activism. Now that you know, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
To help women who are giving life to music, who are giving life to society, who are furthering the objectives of music development and music as something that uplifts the nation. What are we doing to support music as individuals, as groups, and of course as organizations present? So welcome to this networking part of the program. There's some drinks and some snacks. Andre, if it's a pie and Coke, you and I are going to have a performance discussion. Not a fan. But of course, we also then have a fantastic performance ahead of us as well by somebody that we're so proud to be supporting as part of the Concerts SA-led component of the Festival Enterprise Catalyst. So all the best, and you're going to knock everybody's socks off this evening. So thank you, enjoy, and we'll see you around.
You knocked us off in Durban.
Thank you, Monica. It's really cold, so please don't knock our socks off.
No, she will.
Yeah, now that you know, what are you going to do? That's a nice way to end, Monica. The first thing you're going to do is clear the stage so that you can use the exhibition over there, and we'll be doing some food in that side of the room. The documentary will screen again, but please just have a chat and have a chat with each other. Then, if you didn't get a ticket for the Tutu Puoane performance, sorry for you, it's sold out. There's some tickets. There may still be some tickets available. I see Lavuyo saying over there, nope, there's more. And those that you have tickets in advance, please chat to Lee. If you don't have tickets in advance, chat to Lee or Lavuyo over there. And then there's a QR code for the feedback form, because some of us have to pay the piper and report to the funders. So you do the QR code, have something to drink, have something to eat, and put on a jacket that's really cold. Thank you to this wonderful panel.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Andre.
Pies and Coke on that side.
Thank you.
motheo wa mmino mebala e kgabisitseng dikgakana tsa botaki le bokwadi dikakanyo dikologaneng go a bokone bophirima ke mphore e abetsweng ka mmino re lomaganya puo ka poko popagano e phuphumang neeletsano bophadiphadi jwa tlhatlhagano e senang thaka a re phuthaneng phatlhalatsa maaforika gore phuku a phailele phatwe matlhale a phepa ka lerato le neo e bopilweng ka puo e thololo leleme le lomagantseng botaki la rulaganya thuto ya setho motheo o theileng motho ka thotloetso sejaro thakadu thito ya thomo le motho o ke morolong o tlou le tang
Masedi re felletswe ke matla re kopa o re thuse Ramasedi re felletswe ke matla re kopa o re thuse Ramasedi Jehovah wa re bona re kopa o re thuse thuse, re kopa o re thuse, Ramasedi, Jehovah wa